Okay, so we want to talk about string formatting. It's very common to create strings containing a mix of text and variables values to report the outcome of, for example, expression. So program output actually. A simple way to do this is kind of manually join the string and a variable, value with plus sign. And for non-string values, we use str parentheses. So let's see what I will do here. So for example, let's say I'm going to use pi print math.py, right? And then I want to print an outcome in this way. The value will be space plus str, and then I'm going to copy and paste these here. So what this does, this is going to convert math.py to string using str math.py. Let's see. As you see, the value is converted to a string. str will convert the value to a string. Then plus sign will join to these. It will join this part and also this part. Okay, so the other formatting, which is very powerful syntax formatting in Python, is whenever we want to control the amount of precision reported in floating point value. So we use it. We use something like %s, for example, to replace this with a string, or for example, whenever we write down %d, we can replace d with an integer value. And same here, if we change it to f, means this is going to be replaced with f value. And then whenever we have something like %yz, this will going to format z with y decimals. And then if we write down, or we have a format like x.yz, this is going to format z with y decimals in a field of width x. So we are going to look at this and see how we can use this syntax formatting. Let me write it down here. String formatting and syntax formatting. Okay, so for example, if I have a value like price equal 21.324592 this number, I can say print price per liter, and then using %2f, and don't forget all of these must go inside a single quote or double quote. And then what we do, we use percentage, and then we are going to replace what we have here in here. So what I'm going to do, variable price, right? And then in this way, you know that this is going to be an unknown variable that is going to be replaced with some values, and this is going to be the string that is coming before the value is going to be replaced, and the 2 point decimal is here, this part. And then when we have f, means we are replacing a floating number here after percentage. Okay, so if you look at this, compare with the original number, we just have kept 2 points after decimal. And then let's do the same, but change this to 4, and then see how it changed. And then let me write down 2 stands for 2 points, 2 decimal points, 2 decimal points, right? Percent 0.2. Okay, and then here 0.4 is that. And let's keep this 10.10. Okay, so let's see what happens. Let's make it 5 and make this 3, and then let's see what happens. So we have 3 decimals here, and then overall 5, right? And what if we change it to 4? So this is going to be 5, and then so if you change it, you will understand how everything is going to affect. And then here also I mentioned x is the in the field of width, x. Okay, so what else? And 10 gives us more space from r. Okay, so the distance from the whole thing will be 10. Okay, so and I should write down 10 space from r to whatever digits. Okay, so now let's talk about something. Actually, let's have another example. I'm going to print -10 s percent 10.2 and floating, and then all of them are going in the code, and then here I'm going to have the percentage, and then now here I'm going to say total is equal to the variable price. Let's see what happens here. Okay, as you see now, it's more noticeable, the 10 space for a string will affect on this. So this is the way we use syntax formatting to format our program output. So I thought I should write down all the useful syntax formatting here. For example, actually I wrote down some of them. I can copy paste here. So S says a string, and then this one is an integer, and this one floating value with 6 decimals, and then we have more. We have like %E and %capital E. So this is for scientific notation, and then this one is also for scientific notation actually. So what's the difference? This one is small e in exponent. This is larger value of exponent. Okay, so this was string formatting, and maybe I should actually show something like for E, a small e and capital E. Let's see. So for example, we want to print the pi value is here 0.2f, and then we are going to write down in the next what's that line, the E value is %E, for example, and then we are going to here say math.pi is going to be printed instead of this one, and then math.E is going to be printed instead of this one. And then if we print this out, it's going to be in this form. So here, because I have a space after next line, that's why I have a space here, right? Now if I redo this, we don't have a space anymore. Okay, so what else? Okay, so now we want to work on lower and upper. So let's say I have a subject, actually this one. Title is Python programming, and I'm going to use upper to see how this will affect on each single character of or letter of Python programming. So it's going to make change characters to the upper case, right? And then so what this one does, lower, and here I'm going to write down lower. So this one will lower. Actually, let's print them out so we can have each of them printed in the output of this cell. Okay, as you see, this one made all the letters uppercase. This one made all the letters lowercase. And what else? Let's see if title has changed in place. Okay, it didn't change, right? In order to change it, you are going to update it and say title is equal to, for example, title dot uppercase, right? Okay, so this is about some other additional method. Okay, so reading values in from strings. So a string representing certain values such as integer or float also can be easily converted to those kind of type like float or integer, right? And this is also useful for parsing data from text files. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. Let's say we have our values. The value is like as a string. You know, if I use a quotation, this is going to be a string. This is a string because of the quotation, right? So, well, let's even, what is that? Print out the type of this value, and obviously str represent the string, right? And then now I'm going to change this to integer. How? I'm going to use int and then the value. This is going to convert the str to int. So now if I print the type of integer, now you are going to see the change here. So we can do the same thing for a floating number. Let's say I have this value here, and then I'm going to write down float equal to, so how do I convert it? Float dot value, and then we can print out the outcome of this new variable we created. Convert the str to float. And as we see, the type has changed to float, right? Okay, so this is kind of, what is that? Changing a string that contains value. When I say a string that contains value, I can change it. Let's copy all of these and make this like hello, in parentheses, a string that is value. So here a string is not a value, right? So let's see what happens. We receive error because hello cannot be converted to integer value, right? So for this reason we receive error. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is to converting. Okay, so let's see an example. If I have a string data, and this string data contain, do you remember this? Contain value like 1, 2, 4, 8, 9, 2, and then what else? 3 and 7. Okay, if we have such a thing, we can use values equal to, so we know if I have bracket, it's going to save everything as array, right? So first I want to use float let's say I, for I in line, do you remember line split? we'll split the line. I'm going to go through each line for I in line split. So let's see, let's go back and see actually what line split does. So what split does, oh, I didn't. Okay. So what it does, it's going to create a space. So what was the line split, if I'm right? Let me check, double check. Go back to the previous note and search for line split, and then here it is. We'll see this one. As you see, it's going to break each line for us, correct, at this point. So this is the way split line works, right? Here also. So we have 3 lines, right? So it's going to break at each line for us. I stands for each line, means 3 of them. And then we are going to say for line, which is this one, in data split lines. So for each line in a string data dot split lines means if we have applied this method on a string data we have, for each of lines in here, it's going to split it for us and make it a float in an array, right? So what it's going to do, it's going to create 3 different arrays for us, and in each array it's going to separate 1 and 2, 2 and 4, separate 8 and 9, 9 and 2, and 3, 7. Let's see what happens. We want to print these values, and then as you see, first of all, it applied split lines and created 3 different separate kind of data set, right? And then in each of these data set, it went through, created a floating number, and also put this in a form of array, like 1, 2, 4 in one array, this one in one array, and this one in another array. Okay, so this is how we can create a loop and apply the conversion in each single value. Okay, the next topic that we are going to talk about is input output. Input and output. Okay, so what input output functions? These are actually built-in functions. So these are very useful functions. For example, input function method will read a line from input, means it requests an input and then converts it to a string and returns it. So let's see what we have. For example, I can say what is the person's name, and I can ask input information. For example, bank also do the same thing. They when you want to enter your account, for example, or create account, you can you will see the pop-up will show and ask you for your name, right? And then this is the responsibility of input function to get the name. For example, it says please enter your name, for example. And then if you enter this, you will see there's this box, and still there is a star here, means it's running until you give an input to the kind of Python. So in this way we can request a certain input. We can request actually like number. So we can say int and input give me a number. Okay, so if I run this, it's going to ask me for a number, for example, right? So this was asking me for a string, and as soon as I wrote down int and input, use the input function, it's going to ask me for integer. So what happens if I enter, for example, a string? It's going to give me error. And then what happens here if I write down integer? Well, it accepts, but what happens? The 21 is not read as int. It's read as a string object. Okay, so here let me fix this and enter. So sometimes you request an input and then leave it like that and then continue, and as long as we have a star here, we are not able to proceed further and write down more code. We must get rid of this by kind of entering something here, right? So then we will be good, and it will you can go ahead and finish the other coding in the notebook. Okay, so what happens if I say what is the name now? So it's going to show the last value that I entered as a name. So imagine if I enter my name here now, and here I print out the name, it's going to be my name. And then what about number? Let's enter a new number, and I'm going to print the number here, and then you see that it's showing the number for me. So what happens if I enter 1.2 or 2.5 here? So you will see error. How can I fix that? Let me keep this and then write down another number, and then I say floating number. So instead of int, I have to have float in order to be able to enter decimal. And then when I print float number, you're going to see decimal here, right? And then what happens if I enter an integer? Accepts it, right? But what is the output? Going to be float, right? If I entered 24 here, that would be only 24 as integer, right? Only prints out an integer. This one only prints out a floating number. Okay, so this is the concept of input output, which is going to be very useful in programming. Okay, so let's have an example. we want to read a 5-digit integer. Read 5 digits integer and display it with spaces between each digits. So how do we do that? We are going to get numbers, input, and then enter a 5 digits integer, right? And we are going to print the numbers. In which one? I'm going to get the index 1, right? Index 0. And then I'm going to, so for example here, I enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then this is going to print out the first index, and then the second index, and then, because by default, print is going to print out the space between each numbers, right? 3, and what is the last one? 4, right? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is index 0 and 1. Okay, 2, 3, 4. So let's see what prints out. So I'm going to enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then as you see, there's a separate numbers digits here because I printed out the index 0 to 4 of the number that I entered. And because print will create a space between numbers, that's why there's a space between them. And then example also asks for a space. Let's say example asked for comma, right? What I'm going to do here is separate them by what? Comma. Let's see what happened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you see, it's printing everything with comma. So separate. By default, print is separating the elements by a space, and we can change it. Correct? Okay, so this is for today. We are going to continue working on more kind of coding in this way. These are still basic of programming, and mostly strings are the most important one, and we are going to mostly talk about strings for the next couple of lectures. Okay, we'll see you later. Take care of yourself.